I caution everybody as you watch this that this will be graphic. Could I have that video start, please?
This video was intended to inform and educate the public.
Kim Potter is no longer behind bars. She was released after serving 16 months of her 2-year sentence at the Minnesota Corrections Facility in Shakopee.
Welcome once again to another video by the Junkyard News. And in today's video news story, we have a police officer who was caught trying to profit off her conviction of manslaughter. Let's get into it. Some of you may remember ex-police officer Kim Potter, who was released from prison after serving about 16 months for fatally shooting Daunte Wright. She was convicted of manslaughter after mistaking her handgun for a taser and fatally shooting Daunte Wright in suburban Minneapolis back in 2021. After serving about 16 months for manslaughter, Kim Potter was released. Now, after Kim Potter's release from prison, she spent her supervised release in Wisconsin, where she had to adhere to a number of conditions, including regular contact with an agent assigned to oversee her release. And during her supervised release, she was not able to leave Wisconsin unless it was approved by her supervising agent. She had to comply with random unannounced visits and searches of her property, as well as regular drug and alcohol testing. She also could not buy any type of firearm or dangerous weapon. So why is Kim Potter back in the news today? And how did she try to profit off murdering Daunte Wright? Well, it seems that she was invited to be a scheduled speaker to talk to police officers in Washington state about use of force. That's right, she was going to be included in a presentation to law enforcement officers, which had an eye-opening title, Remorse to Redemption, Lessons Learned. Now, part of the talk to other police officers was going to be given by Kim Potter, again, who was convicted of manslaughter in the high-profile killing of Daunte Wright, an unarmed black driver during a traffic stop back in 2021. Now, Daunte Wright was the subject of a traffic stop. Police found out he had a warrant, and when they tried to handcuff him, he jumped back in his car. A struggle ensued, and Kim Potter pulled out her firearm, thinking it was her taser, and pulled the trigger. Again, she was convicted of manslaughter, but only had to serve a short amount of time in prison. 16 months for killing somebody. Now, Ms. Potter's message on the ramifications of using force and ways to avoid it won't end up being received by officers working for the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Oversight Agency. In an abrupt turnaround, the agency's leadership canceled Ms. Potter's training last week amid media inquiries about her presentation. That's right, when news got out that she was going to get paid to speak about how she killed this man, they thought twice about it. What happens in the dark will eventually come to light. And that's what happened here. And now they have canceled. Now, the presentation, which was set to take place at a symposium in Vancouver on September 23rd, again was canceled. The Seattle Times, which first reported on the matter, had raised questions about Ms. Potter's involvement. The decision to bring Ms. Potter was made by well-meaning officers in the agency's leadership who were looking to learn from someone's mistakes, David Postman, the body's board chair, claimed. But this decision was made without the conversation that needs to happen around issues like this, said Mr. Postman. Last week, he took part in a move to rescind Miss Potter's invitation to speak before the agency, which included 100 officers. The debate over her address underscored two starkly different perspectives on the treatment of police officers after wrongdoing. One view is to allow remorseful police officers to use their experience to teach and warn others. The other is that they are the wrong messengers that should be excluded from public discussion because of the suffering they can invoke to others. Now, Katie Wright, the mother of Daunte Wright, said that she felt as if she had been punched in the stomach when she first heard of the plans to feature Miss Potter in the presentation in Washington. Miss Potter, she added, was not showing remorse and was only opening up the wound and hurting their family again. But for Minnesota's Attorney General, Keith Ellison, the cancellation of Miss Potter's talk is a missed opportunity. The loss of a child under the circumstances in which Daunte Wright died is deeply painful, and there is just really no way to help anyone understand how bad it feels, said Mr. Ellison, whose office took over the prosecution of Miss Potter's case. Now, Mr. Ellison continued, claiming that at the time, it is absolutely true that we have to heal. And Kim Potter is doing something courageous and something that we need more people to do. If we do not, we relegate ourselves to repeat the pain and the sorrow, and we are locked into the sort of cycle forever. Now, Daunte Wright's death in April of 2021 set off significant protests in Minnesota. Heightening the tension was that the killing occurred during the trial of Derek Chauvin, the white former Minneapolis police officer who was convicted in the George Floyd incident. Now, released back in April of 2023, Miss Potter has formed an unusual partnership, telling her story as a cautionary tale in use of force training with Amron Ali, a former Minnesota prosecutor who originally charged her. Mr. Ali now works as a police consultant. He advises officers on changes in use of force laws and decision-making, with an eye, he said, on helping to bridge the divide between distressed communities and law enforcement. Mr. Ali said that his remarks would have formed the bulk of the presentation to the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board's officers, and that the idea to work with Miss Potter was his and his alone. Her willingness to participate was courageous, he said, adding, with Kim, we have a message of resilience and hope. Mr. Ali said that he and Miss Potter have given less than a handful of presentations together. Now, for the trip to Washington, her flight and hotel would have been paid for, and she would have received a small salary. So here we have an officer who was convicted of manslaughter, who made a mistake, did wrong, took someone's life, did a extremely small amount of time in prison compared to what she did, and now trying to make money on the death of somebody else. Trying to make money off her mistake. If she wants to do that, that's fine. It should have been part of her sentence, part of her condition of release. It should be considered community service if she wants to do that. She should not get paid to talk about her breaking the law and taking the life of somebody else. And that's exactly what Daunte's mother said. Miss Wright said that nobody should be profiting in any way off her son, particularly not the officer who caused his death. There are other officers who could do this training. There are professors who could do it, she said. I can tell you what the use of force does to a family. Why not ask me to come speak and tell these police officers why you must think before you use force and what can happen when you mistake your firearm for a taser. Now, Mr. Postman, the agency's board chairman, said that the decision to cancel Ms. Potter's presentation was made by him, along with the agency's director and its head of enforcement, with input from other officials. Mr. Postman, who previously worked at the Seattle Times, said that he had not been aware of the presentation until recently, and that he had to search for Miss Potter's name on the internet to remind himself exactly what her role was in the passing of Daunte Wright. Although Mr. Ellison made valid points about healing and about learning from those who have done wrong, Mr. Postman said Miss Wright deserves empathy. Her family deserves empathy. Mr. Ellison also said that he would like to talk to Miss Wright. We can't ignore the victims here, and the continuing struggle around the country with shootings and the role race plays in them. That's hugely important. So comment what you think below about a police officer who gets convicted of killing somebody, manslaughter, only has to serve about 16 months in prison for it. And then, once she is off supervised release, trying to make money and profit to talk about what she had done. Trying to profit off of killing somebody. There's court case precedent out there that when you kill somebody, you can't write books about it and profit. Now, in the United States, we're supposed to have regulation and laws, so convicts can't do this. One of those laws is called the Son of Sam law, and it's designed to ensure that convicted criminals cannot financially benefit from their notoriety. The laws are named after David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, who committed a series of murders in 1970 and later attempted to sell his story to publishers. The core aim of these laws is to prevent criminals from receiving profits for publicizing their crimes, ensuring that any proceeds are directed towards compensating victims, their families, and cover legal fees. Now, how Son of Sam works is when a convicted criminal sells the rights to their story, like if there was a film or a book that was going to be released, the government can seize any profits made from the transaction. These funds are usually directed towards the victims of the crime, their families, or other legal obligations. In 1991, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that New York's original Son of Sam law was unconstitutional because it violated the First Amendment right to free speech. The court found that the law was too broad and could prevent criminals from telling their stories, even if the story itself had significant social or artistic value. So the law was revised. Yes, after the Supreme Court ruling, many states revised their Son of Sam laws to make them more focused. Now these laws typically only target proceeds that are directly related to the crime itself, rather than banning all profits from any story told by a convict. Now, if someone is caught violating these Son of Sam laws, can there be consequences? Well, yes, there can be. If a convicted criminal is caught trying to profit off their crime in the United States, especially in states with Son of Sam laws or other similar statutes, the specific penalties or actions that can be taken typically include the following. Seizure of the profits. If a convicted criminal tries to sell their story, let's say in a movie or in a book deal, or otherwise profit from their crime, authorities can intervene and seize those profits. These funds are often redirected to compensate victims or their families, or used to pay fine, court fees, and restitution. Civil lawsuits can incur. Yes, even in cases where Son of Sam laws might not apply, can sue the criminal in civil court for damages. If successful, the criminal may be required to forfeit any profits gained from telling their story. Some states have additional financial penalties for convicted criminals who attempt to profit from their crimes. This might include fines or additional legal costs, which further reduce any profit that they might gain. You might remember O.J. Simpson. Though acquitted of the criminal charges in the murder of his ex-wife, he was later found civilly liable for their deaths. He attempted to publish a book called If I Did It, and under the terms of the civil judgment, the proceeds were ordered to go to the victims' families. But an important note, intent matters. Sometimes the criminal may attempt to tell a story or work in a consulting role, and if the profits are not seen as coming directly from their crime itself, they may avoid punishment. However, if authorities believe the work is based on or glorifies the crime, it can trigger legal action. So in summary, while the primary consequence is the forfeiture of any profits made, for the crime itself, there can be additional civil lawsuits, financial penalties, and even possible legal consequences if a convict is found violating laws designed to prevent them from profiting off their crimes. So what do you think? Do you think ex-Officer Potter is trying to profit off what she did? Do you think she's just trying to make a buck and earn a living? Do you think it's right that she gets paid to go around and speak about what she did and get compensated for it? Do you think she still has free speech and she can do this without penalty? Or do you think this type of work should have been included in her condition of a release? Again, comment your thoughts below. Although I can understand and appreciate someone who makes a mistake trying to warn and inform others of what they did so it may save a life down the line, I do not believe somebody should be compensated for telling that story when it involved the murder of another person. Thank you again for watching this episode of the Junkyard News. Be careful, people, or the next story we cover, we could be talking about you in the next one. Thanks again.